No, I'm good. I just pull this in here. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Sales Tax Subcommittee of the House Ways and Means Committee. Today, we convene to hear testimony on two items, House Bill 1034 and House Bill 1187 before the subcommittee today. We have the room to 3. We're going to take the testimony that we need. Don't feel like we have to stay till 3, but we want to give everybody time to work with these. I'll introduce each bill, and then we'll move on, give the author a brief opportunity to present the measure, give the subcommittee time to ask questions, and then take testimony today. The first one we want to get to is House Bill 1034. Is Representative Wiedauer, do you want to find a thing that's Representative Chairman Williams is in your seat? What which one? 2? Yes, sir. You have before us HB 1034.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, just make sure we're all LC 500292. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1034, as we talked about last week, extends the exemption on the sales tax to non-recurring major sporting events. This dates back to back in 2016. This is basically a bargaining chip. I related it to a real estate transaction last week about, you're trying to sweeten your offer on the table to attract major sporting events, much like the Super Bowl, national championship football games. This adds FIFA World Cup to that list of approved events. And it also extends the sunset of this, which would set to run out this year, and extends it to 2031. That is because we are already in the running for the 2029 Final Four. And obviously this is addressing the 2026 World Cup games. That's kind of a brief overview, but that's what it does. Obviously, this is a huge economic impact to the state of Georgia. FIFA World Cup, if we were to get some of the events that they're talking about, specifically their broadcasting abilities, this would be a 6-month investment into the city of Atlanta and bring hundreds of millions of dollars to the state. That's what it is in brief. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Representative Wiedauer. Subcommittee have questions, gentlemen. Representative Benton.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative, again, for your work on this bill. You just mentioned the city of Atlanta, and I'm just curious to know, is there anyone here representing the city of Atlanta who has been a part of these discussions and with this legislation since it's gone to impact Atlanta and the state of Georgia so well?
Yes, ma'am. Metro Atlanta Chamber is here as well as the Chamber is supportive of this bill. The Georgia Chamber is supportive of this bill. As we talked last week, one of the unique things about the World Cup is it puts us on a world stage. There are events that surround it, that will spread out throughout the state. If, for instance, the games themselves last 35 days. So there's going to be some outreach into the other outlying areas so that people can, other communities around the state can actually feel the impact of this. They use FIFA World Cup uses this as an opportunity to, try to spark more interest in soccer. It's obviously the world's most popular sport, but not necessarily in the States. So I think they're looking forward to having that opportunity as well. But yes, there are people that can speak to that as well. If you certainly, I know that. Not directly. Yes, ma'am. And I would be shocked if the mayor was not very excited about the possibility of having these games here.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author of the bill, my seatmate, and I know how passionate you are about this bill, and I know the great economic consequences it's going to have to the people of the state of Georgia. I fully support the bill, but You've been so passionate about it. You throw around the acronym FIFA all the time. I just like for you to explain to us what the acronym translates as. What is it? Can you give us the?
I am really
long
excited
version?
about a bill you present in front of me next. It's going to be great.
Can you tell us what FIFA stands for?
I will let Nick Fernandez do that for me.
It's a good bill.
We're gonna let you hop out of that stairs.
Federation of International Footballs. I think it's
all right, you're excused. Nick Fernandez. Hope you had time to Google that.
Federation of International Football.
Thank you.
Could you let us know who you are and who you're representing, and then if you he threw Chairman Williamson's question to you, so we'll let you get to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members. My name is Nick Fernandez. I'm with the Metro Atlanta Chamber. FIFA does stand for Federation of International Football. Federation of International Football Association. He may be a little bit better at that than me. And then to Representative Bentley, to your question about the city of Atlanta. So historically, when we've moved from the bidding process to the host committees, the city of Atlanta, Department of Transportation, Planning have all been historically on our host committees and at the table when it comes to hosting these events. And so they've always had a seat at the table when it comes to the logistics, when it comes to the planning. And they've certainly always been a great partner when hosting these events. So, and then just want to say thank you again to Representative Wiedauer. As mentioned, we are supportive of this. We house the Atlanta Sports Council within the chamber, who are led by Dan Corso, who's goes out and actively recruits these events to the city of Atlanta, to the state of Georgia. We've had a successful run in the past, and we're looking at hopefully another successful run of events here in the future, including FIFA World Cup, and appreciate this committee's work.
Are there any questions for the gentleman? Any questions? Thank you very much. I see no one else signed up to testify. If we have anybody online, nobody online. Anybody else? I did want to share. I'm sorry, Chairman Blackman.
No, I just know that we have had an initial hearing on this, so a lot of us have already heard about the return on this type of investment and the fact that this is an optional type of tool in the toolbox, if you will. So I just thought maybe we could get Nick or the author of the bill to mention what that return has looked like in the past and potentially what that could look like in the future.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Let me give me one moment.
Well, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, while he's getting ready to answer your question, I was asked earlier today, and I was going to share this and go the direction the chair did there. One of the things that is very important, I think, to us is much like the SEC experience happens. If it's easier to do, much like the SEC experience happens around a football game there in the Georgia World Congress Center. Two things will go on here, or we hope to go here. Number one is we hope to get, as the gentleman said, the international press pool may be headquartered here in Atlanta. That's the first thing. But the second thing is that there was talk in the last meeting, and please articulate this further, Representative, that these fan experiences would be out and around the state. I think that's really big for areas outside the state. So if you could highlight both those in Chairman Blackman's question about the economic impact.
Absolutely. So you're looking at an economic impact of almost $400 million. With the reality is that we won't get every single one of these events. We may get 2, we may get 3. We don't really know. And again, that's why this is a great bargaining tool to, try to sweeten that pot. The more we get, the more money we would bring in. As the chairman mentioned, the International Broadcast Center, that's what I was referring to. They would come in for months before, obviously during broadcast, the 35 days while they're in action, and then kind of the closeout period. So you're talking about, hundreds of millions of dollars and when I say risk, you're really not risking, you're not spending any of that money if you don't actually get awarded any of that. So you're talking about the loss of about $3 million to gain upwards of $400 million. So a huge opportunity to kind of stack the coffers of our budget and be able to fund things across the state. To the chairman's other questions, so there are fan experiences, like he said. You know, you have the SEC fan experience, the SEC championship game. Those types of events, they're looking to do satellite events throughout the state to really kind of touch different areas. So that's something we're also very excited about, and being able to have that experience touch everyone in Georgia, or at least get them a lot closer to home.
Thank you, Representative. Number 4 again, Chairman Wilson.
Yeah, in the serious vein, didn't we back into the math that is effectively about 4 times the economic impact of a Super Bowl?
Correct. And what reason for that being is the time that people are here is extended much longer than you would see in the typical behavior of a Super Bowl event, where they're in for a week. You know, Super Bowl, they'd be in for a weekend. Here, they're going to come for a week or weeks or months.
Thank you. We have before us today, again, this second hearing, we have no further public testimony that we're looking for on this. The committee's in a posture, HB 1034 LC 500292. We're in a posture to act on the bill. What's the pleasure of the subcommittee in regards to this item? I have a motion. This move on to full committee with a do pass recommendation. Is there a discussion on the motion? Discussion on the motion. Motion is due pass to full committee LC 500292 on House Bill 1034. No further discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. This moves on to full committee with a unanimous vote.
Thank you all. Thank you, Chairman.
Recommendation. Thank you. Moving on in the agenda this afternoon, the next bill we'll take testimony today as we continue to work this bill, HB 1187 LC 432995. Chairman, did I say that backward? 2195. That's why I always repeat myself. You know, I'm 50-50 to get it right. Let me try that again. HB 1187 LC 432195. Chairman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Wasn't ready for you yet.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a bill we discussed last week. Basically, it's the data centers, and we're talking about right now the sunset is supposed to take place in 2028. And there have been a lot of questions. Well, why is that relevant now? Because in the bill, they're asking for the sunset to take place in 2038. So what we thought we would do is have some experts' testimony, because I know there's a lot of questions and there's a limited amount of time. So I would like to start with the experts' testimony, if that would please the chair.
Yeah, let me just ask that, and perhaps I can have them. I have a list of people that wish to speak on the bill. So if you come to testify, just let me know if you signed up. That'd be great. If you're doing this as part of the presenters or the bill authors, if the author's presentation, just let us know and we'll check you off. But with that, I'll let you, as part of your presentation, call folks to testify. Well, let me first ask, subcommittee have questions of the author. Well, I don't. That's what I was asking. I'll call the folks to testify. I just thought you might have somebody to help with the presentation. So we'll just go to the list.
Please do.
Okay, there you go. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to go to the first, but they're not. They represent different folks, right? Yeah. Nick, is it Nick Blessing? Am I right? You're available on Zoom. Nick, do you hear us?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I can hear you. Can you hear me all right?
We can. Yes, sir. You have the floor.
Excellent. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before the committee on behalf of QTS as well as the broader Data Center Coalition. The Data Center Coalition is an organization of 18 leading data center owners and operators. Specifically, QTS is a co-location data center provider. We specialize in serving enterprise, federal, and hyperscale customers. QTS continues to grow and place significant investment in Georgia, and that's in no small part thanks to this Section 68.1 exemption. As the committee knows, this program requires capital investment between $100 million and $250 million based on whether a facility locates in a rural or urban area, as well as job creation and pay thresholds. The lower threshold in rural areas obviously provides an incentive for investment outside of those major metropolitan hubs. Due to the success that we've seen in this program, QTS specifically has also elected to locate a number of senior executive positions within the state, as well as a regional corporate headquarters. Our Georgia footprint currently spans over 2 million square feet of data center space. We employ 100 direct employees, local Georgians, and we contract for an additional 50 across various jurisdictions in state. And for the committee, this also excludes the hundreds of construction, technician, and logistic jobs associated with facility development, as well as those tenant jobs created after the facility is actually constructed. As a co-location provider, QTS builds and staffs our own facilities. We lease space to tenants in addition to large regional enterprises like a Coca-Cola or a UPS. Many of our tenants are small local Georgia companies. Regardless of their sizes, we've seen increasingly that these tenants require long-term leases due to the time it requires to either build the facilities or construct their specific environments. In many cases, we've seen that these lease terms can be 5, 7, or 10 years in duration. And the development of the buildings themselves, as well as the campuses, can take anywhere from 1 to 3+ years based on land acquisition, permitting, entitlement activities, so on and so forth. For some hyperscale providers, we've even seen that this time frame may be longer. That delay means that a data center planning to enter the market today may not be able to utilize the incentive until their facility opens a few years from now. Tenants and operators have difficulty evaluating when, where, and how to invest without long-term certainty around the duration of the incentive, as it may also not cover the entirety of the lease. QTS, along with the Data Center Coalition, stand in support of extending the sales tax and use exemption under HB 1187 for an additional 10 years from 28 to 38. And we hope that this measure will ensure that Georgia continues to offer competitive long-term economic development offerings to providers and tenants while preserving the existing capital investment, job creation, and payroll targets. The coalition more broadly has also partnered with the Metro Atlanta Chamber, the Georgia Chamber, and the Technology Association of Georgia, and we've retained Magnum Economics that have prepared an economic analysis study. And we'd be happy to also offer the author of that study for further testimony to provide an overview.
Thank you, Ms. Flushing. Did you have anything further? If you care to, if there are questions, do you care to take questions?
I'd be happy to take questions or yield the remainder of the time to Fletcher Magnum, who is available to speak towards the study and greater overall economic impact.
Sure. I have a light blinking. Let me see if I have a question for you. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a very quick question. You referenced the counties below 50,000 in population. Are you aware, did your company make any investment in a county with less than 50,000 population?
To this date, we have not yet at this point. Most entrants we see into that market are of somewhat smaller scale and size. QTS at this point has not. However, we do continue to look at availabilities in regions outside of major metro hubs.
And my question to you or anybody else in the room as they present is, I'd like to know if any facility has been located in the county of below 50,000. If anybody in the room either, I'd love for the committee to have that information if it's available. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I think that the speaker who conducted the study, Mr. Fletcher Magnum, may be able to speak towards that. My understanding is that there has been investment in those localities outside of the hubs. I can't speak directly to them as I'm here also representing my company specifically.
Thank you.
What is it? We're going to share the same microphone. Okay. I've got a question. Well, I'm using this mic. When I had a Zoom call with someone the other day, they mentioned a data processing in Bullock County. Could you please tell me the name of that data processing in Bullock County that you were speaking of? Yeah, I'm not sure if you were the man. It was, I can't remember who I was talking to. Oh, it'll be up there. Okay, thank you. Wrong person.
That's right.
Didn't show you picture.
Yeah, picture's worth 1,000 words.
Okay. Further questions for the gentleman? If not, I'm going to move on then. Mr. Magnum, are you with us?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I am.
Yes, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. My name is Fletcher Magnum. I'm the CEO and founder of Magnum Economics. We're based in Glen Allen, Virginia, just outside of the city of Richmond. We've been in business since 2003. We were hired by the Data Center Coalition to do an analysis of the economic impact of data centers on Georgia. And I've been asked today just to provide some high points of that analysis. In answer to Chairwoman Hausman's question, I know that there is a data center in Bullock. I don't know the name, but I can provide that information for you at a later time if you'd like. Some of the highlights from that analysis, again, the data for this analysis came from publicly available data sources, JLL, CBRE, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and also confidential interviews with data center participants within the state of Georgia. The simulation software that they've used to conduct the economic impact assessment is IMPLAN, which is one of the most commonly used economic simulation models in the country. The reason for that is it provides very precise estimates in terms of indirect impact, which are the economic ripples that come from the supply chain that is associated with data centers, and also induced economic impact, which are the household purchases of employees. Some of the highlights from that study are that Georgia is strategically positioned to be a significant data center hub. The Atlantic market is now the 6th largest data center market in the United States. When we look at just co-location data center capacity, companies like QTS, what we find is that the Atlantic market has grown 47% since 2013. And importantly, over 4/5 of that growth came after enactment of 68.1 in 2018. Although most of those data centers are located in Fulton Cobb and Gwinnett, data center development, and one of the recent trends is that data center development is spilling over into more rural communities like Douglas and Newton, which have received $1 billion in investment each, and also Bullock and Carroll. And again, Representative Hausman, I'll find the name of that data center in Bullock for you. Georgia is also strategically located to serve the Southeast, which for most of the post-war period has been the fastest growing region of the United States. One of the other points that came out of the study was that data centers provide high-wage, fast-growing jobs with highly transferable skills. Employment in the data processing and hosting sector. Employment data is captured by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They use an industry code system for that called NAICS. There is no NAICS code for data centers specifically. Data center processing and hosting, or data processing and hosting, is a broader category that they use to capture that information. But in that category, employment within that industry grew 176% between 2010 and 2020 within Georgia. When we look at wages, wages increased from $78,000 on average, $78,500 in 2010 to $128,700 in 2020, a 64% increase. These jobs are part of a high-tech labor pool with, again, very transferable skills, and those skills are in demand in a large number of high-tech industries, which include advanced manufacturing, architecture and engineering, computer system design, programming, and research and development. One of the things that we found that was unique about Georgia in the study was that direct employment by data centers is about 50% larger than we see in other states. And one of the reasons for that, as was also mentioned by QTS, is that a common characteristic in Georgia is that the data centers are co-located with corporate headquarters and other backroom operations. One of the other findings from the study was that, or an important thing to keep in mind, is that the data center incentive that we're talking about applies only to taxes or the sales tax on capital equipment. It's important to realize that data centers pay all the other state and local taxes. Those would include payroll, real estate, business personal property, and most importantly, the tax on electricity, sales tax on electricity. An analysis that was done by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in 2017 is pretty much the gold standard in terms of the economic impact that data centers produce. That study found that an average data center at that time purchased about $1 million a month in terms of electricity. So the sales tax on that $1 million a month, even in 2017, is fairly significant. It's also important to realize that, like manufacturing, data centers are a capital-intensive industry. Almost all states, if not all states, provide the manufacturing industry a sales tax exemption on capital equipment purchases so as not to uniquely disadvantage them for being a capital-intensive industry. In Georgia, unlike manufacturing, data centers also pay tax on their electricity bill where manufacturers do not. One of the final things that we found was that in terms of economic impact, our analysis showed that conservatively in fiscal year 21, from July of 2020 through June of 2021, we estimate that data center construction, ongoing construction, produced about 1,020 direct jobs with $69.6 million in associated wages. In that regard, I think it's important to mention that Holder, which is one of the largest data center construction companies in the country, is located or headquartered in Atlanta. Data centers in terms of operations, there are about 100 data centers, or we estimate that there are approximately 100 data centers in Georgia. And they directly supported approximately 3,480 jobs with an associated wages of about $275.8 million in fiscal year 2021. In terms of fiscal impact, we did not have data on direct fiscal impact. A definitive number in that regard would have to come from the department or the Georgia Department of Revenue. In my understanding, at this point, they have not been able to provide that. But in terms of the indirect fiscal impact, what we found was that those economic ripple effects in terms of indirect and induced impact generate annually approximately $190 million in state and local impact. And although we did not have direct impact or direct fiscal impact, we know again from that gold standard study that was done by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in 2017 that on average, a $1 billion investment in data centers generates approximately $5 million a year in state and local income tax. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have. I'd be glad to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Can you, that last point again, tell me, you said a $1 billion investment in data centers created what in tax?
According to the study that was done by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in 2017, what they found, their analysis showed that $1 billion in data center investment produced approximately a little bit over actually $5 million a year annually in state and local income tax. And that's a nationwide number on average.
And I want to be, yeah, and that's what I wanted to be clear. I mean, since you're remote and we're here, I'm just trying to have a, so you're talking about 1 billion with a B generates 5 million with an M.
That is correct.
Okay. Per year. And that is in that $1 billion investment is a total investment in land, sticks and bricks.
The whole ball of wax. Yes, sir. Okay.
I mean, would you agree with me that that's 1/2 of 1%?
I would agree with you that that's 1/2 of 1% of the overall investment. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any further questions? Any further questions for the gentleman? We don't have any right now. I don't know if you're able to stand with us. We invite you to do so should anything further come up. And I'm looking on our iPads. We don't have that study electronically. I think if you can perhaps get that to Mr. Groom in the Ways and Means office, that would be awesome. And he can get it out to the subcommittee and the full committee members at the direction of Chairman Blackman. It may be already down in the committee. It's just not loaded on the iPads we have here. If nothing further from Mr. Mangum, Natalie Stewart with Switch. Ms. Stewart, are you Zoomed? No, there you are.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, ma'am. If you would just, I hope I got your name close. And if you just let us know, I said with Switch, and you can articulate that further. Just let us know who you have with you and who you represent.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm Natalie Stewart. I am the National Vice President of Government and Public Affairs for Switch. And with me, I also have here Chris Pumphrey, who's the head of economic development for Douglas County. So thank you for providing me the opportunity to testify today in support of this House bill. Switch is a technology infrastructure company. It's a data center company based and headquartered in Las Vegas. But in the great state of Georgia, we are proud to call Douglas County home to one of our Switch primes, the Switch Keep campus. It is our main campus and Southeast headquarters for the United States. For those members on the panel that were not in the legislature in 2018, and to provide a brief refresher, I want to give you just a bit of history and important context to Switch's presence in Georgia and why we are here today. Switch builds and maintains the highest rated data center ecosystems in the world, and I mean ecosystem. In 2018, we came to Georgia while searching for potential locations for a Southeastern US growth opportunity, and we fell in love with what we found here. It's a business-friendly state, it's a growing economy, a common sense state and local government. Switch made the decision to invest heavily in Georgia, and we worked diligently alongside others in the co-located data center industry to create an economic environment that put Georgia on parity with our current and prospective clients when compared to other states. We found a positive working relationship with the legislature, which was excited about our promises of capital investment, excited about our promises of job growth, excited about our commitment to the use of 100% renewable energy, 50% veteran workforce, and over a third of our executive team are women. By the end of session in 2018, the legislature passed and the governor signed a tax treatment policy that provided abatements of qualified data center equipment for our customers in the Sales and Use Tax Acts. And we immediately began the development of the Keep campus. To date, Switch has invested over $250 million into the Douglas County campus. At full build out, it will be an investment over $2.5 billion in the state of Georgia. You see, this is a large scale construction project and campus. It will be done in 4 phases, providing over 1,500 construction jobs to the community and state. Since 2019, when we began the development, almost 400 of those jobs have been filled, and 96% of them have come from Georgia contractors and citizens. At least 3 more data centers have moved to and expanded to that region, and the state of Georgia is now ranked the 2nd highest data center market in the country, according to an end of the year report done by CBRE in 2021. For nearly 4 years, this has been a story of promises made and promises kept, a very successful economic development partnership with the state. And I'm here today to support extending the sunset to 2038 so that our clients can continue to grow their footprint in the state. The sales and use tax incentives are an important feature that our clients look for in deciding which market to deploy their gear in. These deployments can be up to $100 million plus in high technology computer servers. This is technology that they refresh every 2, 3, 4 years because they have to keep up with the pace and the changes within our industry. And so we are seeing our clients deploying at larger scales, and they ideally would like to sign longer term leases, something similar to what Nick mentioned from QTS. When our campus is fully built out, there will be a year or 2 left of this incentive treatment that's currently on the books. So 2 out of the 4 of our buildings are already fully leased. Extending the sunset to 2038 will help provide long-term stability for our clients within Georgia. And others in the co-located industry need to be able to provide investment roadmap to market the state of Georgia to our clients. You have 27 other states that offer similar incentives in this data center industry, some with no sunset. But once our clients are here in Georgia, they see firsthand the benefits of having a footprint in this great state. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Natalie, thank you for being here with us for what Switch has already done for our state. I know we're going to hear more testimony concerning the direct employment that y'all know is associated, with Switch, and then overall the industry partners as well. But as we're talking about the construction that continues to take place out at Switch, can you talk any at all about the number of construction jobs that have been generated based on the building activity that's going out at y'all's campus?
Absolutely. So we began construction at the beginning of 2019. We have the development plan calls for, it's now 4 phases. We have our first building completely built out. We've started construction on our second building. Keep in mind also that we started building essentially during COVID. We have created about 500 full-time construction jobs so far in the community, just shy of 500. 96% of them are Georgia residents, Georgia contractors. We have some union and non-union on site. In addition to those construction jobs, we have, some full-time employees, but then other employees from Switch that are flying in and out to work in and out of that environment.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Eddie Bentley, Chairman House, will you be next?
Quick question.
No,
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
I'll be very brief. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my question, thank you, Ms. Natalie, for being here and representing Switch this afternoon. But I would just like to hear from the representative from Douglas County. Can you share with us how Switch has really impacted your community?
Sure thing. More than happy to. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Glad to be with you all this afternoon. Once again, my name is Chris Pumphrey, President of Elevate Douglas Economic Partnership. We're a public-private partnership for economic development in Douglas County, west of Atlanta. Switch has been a huge benefit to our community. We were a community that was mostly a bedroom community, suburban community, people coming to shop in the malls, kind of grew into an industrial base, whereas built around warehouse and logistics. Some years went on, we were able to attract a data center. With the passage of House Bill 696, that brought Switch to Douglas County and really began a true evolution of our community, really going from being just a suburban bedroom community and distribution hub to being known for data center development. And so Switch has really kind of led the charge in that, and also has been a huge community partner for us in the community as well. During the point in time when they were under construction during COVID, we were looking at how can we help support small businesses in our community, and Switch stepped up right away to help us in providing grant funds to provide to small business owners in Douglas County to help them continue to grow and evolve their business. So they've been great community partners working with various entities in the school, in the Douglas County community. And then obviously the tax benefits that come along with their investment has been tremendous for us as well. So we're really grateful to have Switch and then the other companies that have come to Douglas County as a result of this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Houston.
Okay, I've got 2 questions. Do y'all file a report to tell us how much this is really costing the state by not selling sales tax? Any kind of reports filed?
Yes, ma'am. We file an annual report with the Department of Revenue and with Douglas County.
Okay, and they're all filed, have been all filed.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the next question, I've been looking at these dates on this paper that were given to me. So y'all didn't purchase the land or anything until after we passed the sales tax? It didn't have anything did you purchase the land before we passed the bill? In Douglas?
I actually don't know exactly when we closed on that land.
Okay. So
I will have to get back to you.
It could be some things in Georgia that would intrigue people besides giving stuff away, isn't it?
Well, I understand what you're saying, ma'am, but I would like to reiterate the fact that we were interested in Georgia, right? We were interested in this market. I mean, one of the reasons why, geographically, It made sense for us in terms of a latency issue for our clients, right? And so we actively were looking for land in Georgia. That is true. But in our industry, right, there are 27 other states where our clients do not have or have little or pay zero sales and use tax on their data center equipment.
So y'all didn't decide to come to Georgia until after y'all found out you had the sales tax, correct?
It was part of our equation.
Part of your what?
Part of the equation.
So you hadn't purchased the land.
I don't know when we closed on the land, ma'am.
Oh, okay. But I wouldn't think you decided to come, if you'd purchased the land first. Just wondered if that had anything to do with it.
I don't know exactly when we
Because
purchased
there were a
the
lot of
land.
talk when it came. I was here when the sales tax exemption was held, that y'all had already started and then that y'all came for the sales tax afterwards.
We were
maybe that was not true.
We were actively looking for land while we were pushing for this legislative change in 2018. What I don't know is when we actually closed on the land. And so I don't want to
So this had a big determination about whether you came to Georgia.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman House. I will say that we have a report up here that's done. It's a tax expenditure report that is done on all of our tax credits and expenditures. And for 68.1 in the 2020 year, $33 million of sales tax was exempted based on 68.1. The year prior to that, 28 million and change. The year prior to that in 2018, 4 million. So the reporting is getting done, not just by Switch, but by it's being tracked by the revenue department. So that work is being done. Dr. Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This might be for Douglas or for Switch. I guess y'all had handed out this paperwork that showed Georgia, having a 5 to 10 year current exemption. It also showed Colorado and California, I believe, having no sales tax exemption, or Michigan. But I was looking up to see that they have the same or more than we do. Kind of, it's a two-part question. Is that true that you're going to locate where the customers are regardless of a sales tax exemption, even if they have, like Colorado, California, and Michigan, no sales tax exemption? Or is there something else about property tax abatements, jobs tax credits? My understanding is y'all are not eligible for any of those, but I guess Douglas County would know. One of the questions was raised to make sure that data centers didn't double or triple dip, would be the negative way to say it. That means get property taxes you're not paying, sales tax over here you're not paying, maybe even a jobs tax credit. Can anybody speak knowledgeably to that on whether or not you're eligible for all three? Or
yeah, so I'll answer the local part of that. Sorry, I'll answer the local part of that question. So
property tax abatement.
On the property tax abatement. So what we do as a local community, we incentivize the owner, which is basically Switch. So when Switch gets the property tax abatement.
So there is a property tax abatement.
The benefactor of the sales and use tax exemption, however, is their clients, not Switch. So the clients who own the servers, who acquire those servers, those are the ones who get the sales and use tax exemption on that acquisition. We do not incentivize the client on any property tax abatement. So they are 100% taxed on their equipment that they bring into the Switch facility.
Okay, and annual ad valorem taxes or something on that business property of the clients?
Yeah,
Switch?
Yeah, so the clients who own the servers, they basically are taxed local ad valorem property taxes. And their tax, They do not have an abatement on those taxes. And they are the ones who receive the benefit of this sales and use tax exemption.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
In that same vein, to the gentleman from Douglas County, thank you for your testimony today. Are you with the local development authority?
Yes, sir.
And just out of curiosity, what was you're saying that Switch is paying the property ad valorem taxes on the real property? There was no abatement for them?
Yeah, so that's what I was saying was Switch is the owner of the real estate.
Okay.
And the facility that they constructed. They basically made basically built the bones for it to be a data center. And so they do have a property tax abatement.
Is it a 10-year phase out or phase in rather?
It is basically 10 years, and we did it for their various phases of their development.
And what about is for both the county and the school board?
Correct. Correct.
So the school board agreed to an exemption, or did the development authority do it?
Yeah, the development authority did the exemption, but then what we get the greater benefit from is the clients who are receiving the sales and use tax exemption benefit. They are 100% taxed. So if you take their investment, it actually ultimately becomes larger than Switch's investment. And so that's really the greater benefit, is that you're benefiting 100% from that personal property, which are those servers, as Natalie mentioned, are refreshed with their investment every 3 to 4 years.
And again, this is not, I'm just trying to get clarity on it. Was there any sales tax exemption on construction materials going into the construction of your building? No, so no sales tax exemption on materials used in the course of construction?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
And was this done through an industrial revenue bond of any kind?
Yeah, a bond for title.
It was so technically the title still held in the Industrial Development Authority's name.
Yes, sir.
So really you don't own the building, you're leasing the building under contractual terms.
Technically, yes.
Technically, and as such, and that's where I get a little bit lost. So is there a pilot in place, payment in lieu of taxes?
Yes, they are making a pilot of payment in lieu of taxes.
Okay, so Chairman, yeah, so Chairman, as I understand, saying that there wasn't a development, the development authority owns the land, and contractually Switch is leasing the land, and there is a pilot tax structure, a payment in lieu of taxes, rather than you're not really paying property tax and on your real property and property tax on your business personal property. It's all in one pilot payment. It's
Yes, for Switch, just for Switch.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about just for Switch. I'm just trying to get my head around the mechanics of the deal. And how much was that bond validated for? The aggregate amount.
750 million, I believe.
So it'll be another phase bond when you.
No, it's all, we built it all at once. So each phase is.
I'm sorry, I thought I understood you to say that you're going to be expanding that campus.
We are.
So you'll have to go back and have additional bonds validated if you're keeping the same ownership structure.
We built it from the beginning, so it was built with the intent of future phases.
So that's what.
Yeah.
So you had to validate a larger bond amount. Just
no. It's the investment made by Switch is 750 million, and then the investments from their clients are then everything above that.
I'm talking about the construction of the building itself.
Correct.
Was bonded out through the development authority.
Correct.
And you're saying that's about $750 million.
Yes, sir.
But there is, and the intention of Switch is to greatly expand the building space there. So you'll either have had that covered in the original bond.
Yeah, we basically built out 3 phases, so 3 different buildings, but they're actually now doing 4 buildings.
So, sir, it's actually, I understand there's a little bit of confusion here. So the original development plan called for 3 different phases. However, if you ever drive by this site, you will see that there have been some challenges in terms of elevation and the topography of the site of the lot. So what we had to do actually is essentially take one of our buildings, it's the same square footage, and split it in half, just to kind of situate it a little differently on the lot, right? And so technically it's now 4 buildings, but the original bond was for $750 million. And there are different, let's say, like year targets, right, that we're supposed to hit in our development agreement. We have surpassed the first target so far. So we've opened up phase 1 sooner than expected, and we have begun construction on phase 2.
So it's like when you build a home and you take out a builder's note from a bank. They have the certain metrics you got to meet in terms of the construction of your home, and they release the funds as those go forward. And that's what y'all are doing. So that's why I'm just trying to. And you mind if I? So y'all originally said, and you're my banker, so we'll get through this together. $750 million was the anticipated build for the entire Switch campus. We're about halfway through right now, somewhere in between a third and halfway.
That's fair. That is
And
a fair
so
statement.
if we, an entire package of $750 million was anticipated, we've probably spent somewhere around $375 million, somewhere around there.
Yes, about 325 million.
So the remaining $425 million is sitting there to help fund the completion of the final piece of y'all's project, y'all's campus.
Correct.
But follow-up question, Mr. Chairman. Again, thank you for educating us. And again, this is not an antagonistic question. I'm just trying to get my mind around the structure of the deal. But a friend just is watching online texted me a good question. Does Douglas County have Freeport exemptions? You have Freeport?
Yes, all three phases.
So wouldn't this Freeport apply to your customers? There's no Freeport exemption.
I don't think so.
It's
really for goods in process. Yeah. Inventory.
If I could interject, if it were a large if it was a large company and they could store servers there and not activate them and perhaps get the Freeport from that, because that server might ultimately go to another data center someplace else. I mean, you could do that. They could claim Freeport on that if they wanted to, if it was going to ship. But I think there's some pretty strict, it can't be running and claim a Freeport exemption, I believe, correct? Yeah,
that would be my
and I doubt seriously they probably stage it, because that's expensive square footage to stage inventory in, because it has to be climate controlled and so forth. Further, Representative Williamson.
That's all questions.
Are there additional questions? I won't belabor the point for the committee day, but I would like to the extent that it's not, IP or private information, I'd like to understand a little bit more about the pilot. I think that's important. And the question I would ask about Douglas is, for instance, do you have an eSPLOS in Douglas?
Yes.
Okay, so the pilot is covering the school system for their loss of revenue, either partially or completely, and how much? I think, I guess what I'm trying to tell you, it's important for us to know that, because what we hear from our colleagues in the House is, education, has had its struggles. I'm sorry if you have trouble here. Has had its struggles through COVID and so forth. And if we're passing exemptions down here that take money away from the boards of education, I'm hearing today for the first time you have a pilot for education that may be making the county school system, if not whole, a reasonably good place. Those are things important for us to, I think, hear about.
Yeah, I'll be happy to address that. So, yes, to the point, yes, if you go back to Natalie's point, the initial announcement was $2.5 billion. The $2.5 billion is $750 million invested by Switch. So the balance of that are servers, which are invested by their clients. So that's, I don't know what,
1.750.
Correct. So all of that is 100% taxed, which means that is taxes going to the schools and going to the county. So all of that is benefit to that. So what we do is basically provide the incentive to the real estate owner, which being Switch, who then has who then kind of relays some of that benefit with that investment. Now the companies now can come in and invest their servers. We do not do a bond for title for those servers. So from the school's perspective, there was a significant gain in property taxes because those servers are not taxed, which is the largest part of that investment are those servers, and by which those servers are continuously refreshed. So the way we go
okay, no, I misheard you earlier when you said there was a pilot for ad valorem taxes. I thought you were talking about the pilot for ad valorem taxes on the personal property, which would be the computer.
Correct.
That you're talking about there's a pilot for the real property.
Correct.
Okay. So, maybe offline after today, you can touch base. I mean, if anybody else is interested here, we can carry on, but I know that people's time is valuable. I don't want to go too far down that, but that's very helpful information.
And our school superintendent has been very supportive.
Yeah, it's that's important information for us to do. Chairman Blackman.
I can.
Yes, sir. Okay. Are there further questions? I'm going to come back to you. Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Martin, I just wanted to elaborate a little bit with regards to our relationship with the Douglas County school system. Switch takes great pride in our partnership with the local school systems in all of the areas that we're in. And we've been very supportive of Douglas County schools. We have sponsored several of their first robotics teams, and actually they have become a client. So we house the Douglas County school system in our ecosystem at no cost to them. So, I mean, it's a positive working relationship that we have with them, and
okay.
I just wanted to.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Further questions? Anyone have a question? Now we're going to do questions. Now we'll comment when we have them, Bill. There you go. That's what I wanted to hear. You're recognized for that purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris, how long have you been out there?
11 years.
11 years. I've known Chris probably 7 or 8 years, and he's done a great job. I just thought I'd put that in there. I slid that comment in.
Yes, sir. Isn't that true? And Chris, isn't it true that we won't hold that against you at all? That Chairman said, no, it's great to know. Thanks for sharing that. That we don't have any further questions at this point. I did want to go ahead and ask this.
It's pretty closely related. I mean, my guess is that this was a relatively coveted project by your development authority in your county, and my guess would be that this is a competitive situation. I mean, there are a lot of counties across the state that would very much like to have the kind of investment and facility. Would you concur with that? That you wouldn't want that to get away from you, in other words?
Not at all.
Okay. I was just curious. I know a lot of these things we do incentives that come at the state and the local level across our state when we're trying to recruit. And I look at, to the author of the bill, we have a federal installation locally that I know most of our neighbors are contribute to from a employee standpoint. But if you get outside of the employment, we also have a number of consulting groups and folks that are part of that job infrastructure. And I'm trying my best, I guess, to kind of draw some comparisons and correlations to what I think some people misunderstand as your business model, so to speak, and what that actually means from an investment standpoint. We have that federal installation. We don't get any tax dollars directly. And then we also have some places where they can shop out there. But you also have a lot of contractors that do business, and it does create a lot of private sector jobs on top of that.
Don't interrupt the chairman. When he's done.
I'm done. He could finish,
please.
The ripple effect is enormous in that area that you're talking about, and so it is here.
Enormous is probably not even a big enough word.
So, Mr. Chairman, I can address your comment a little bit. So, I mean, there's been a total of $161 million of wages and salaries through the end of 2021 with Switch. 97 million of that has been in direct wages, 27 million in indirect wages, and 37 million in induced wages. You know, we really build, it's an ecosystem. I mean, you know, our wonderful lobbyist here, Graham Thompson, likes to describe it a little bit as like a mall, right? So, I mean, Switch, we have several different clients in and out of our ecosystem. And so to put it into perspective, you know, company wide, we have just over maybe just under 900 employees. But we have over 14,000 people badged to work in and out of our environments, right? And so for this campus, we already have 1,000 people badged to work in and out of this facility in Douglas County, whether they're full-time employees at Switch that live in Georgia, whether they're other Switch employees that fly in and out and stay at the hotels and eat at the restaurants, whether they're our clients, whether they're vendors, or, you know, one of the 500 contractors that are on site right now. And it's nonstop. I mean, data is the new oil. It's not going to stop. It's just growing, and our construction is not going to stop. You know, we love what we've seen in Douglas County. And to your point, these projects are very, very competitive. And, you know, we're looking for additional property in this great state, in Douglas County and outside Douglas County. I mean, we love what we are seeing here in Georgia. And so it does, you know, I hope that creates a little bit more of a holistic understanding of, you know, our Switch kind of workforce and ecosystem there.
Thank you. I'll put this in the form of question because I want to get with you guys. We met last week.
Yes, sir.
And you tell a story, but I just real quick, I'm not sure. I know the difference between the wages. I know some of the people that come in may earn a wage there, but if they're not in Georgia more than 30 days, they don't pay Georgia income taxes. They pay it to the state they're in. I travel a lot. I know how that works. But if I were to just take your $161 million and divide it by 5.75, the Georgia current Georgia income tax, and then, you know, take that number and divide it by 7, that would be about $130 million worth of materials to equal the same thing. So, I mean, if you're talking about getting tax exemption on $1.75 billion in hardware. Okay. So to break even as a state, you'd have to pay $800 million in wages. It's not it has to be a holistic picture. But I mean, when you do you understand what I'm saying? Because state sales tax is 4%. And I mean, we do that. We incentivize people. We do that. So isn't it true? What we're looking for here is the holistic approach to this. I mean, 7% on $1.75 billion is a lot of money. And the way the bill currently reads is you only have to do 20 jobs. You're doing much more than that. So what I have asked you for last week, I've asked other people that will come to testify in this room, is show us the holistic picture. This gentleman has done a great job at showing what else is in there in the pilot. So that's what I would ask is we work this. We want a good thing for Georgia. We want a sustainable, I mean, you talked about sustainable energy to run the project. We want a sustainable tax, code to make this go so that, you know, Douglas is doing it right, but you know, we may go in some other county with some other actor that might not, just because state code allows it. So help us to get to that. And I think we'll have a good thing. Comment, isn't that true in the form of question? Number 10 went away. So we have no further questions. We'll go on for the rest of the testimony and move on if you guys I would love to stay in touch with you.
Sure thing.
Thank you very much. Leanna Brown. You were here a minute ago. There you are.
I would love for her to join me.
Make it so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee, for allowing us to speak on House Bill 1187. At our core, Leanna Brown with the Metro Atlanta Chamber.
And I'm Nancy Palmer with the Georgia Chamber.
we're doing this for the sake of time, speaking together, but at our core, the Metro Atlanta Chamber is an economic development organization. We support projects both in the Metro Atlanta region and across the state. We have a robust economic development team that works several data center projects, and they hear firsthand about the attractiveness of our state and about the importance of this incentive. And in fact, the Georgia Department of Economic Development actively promotes this tool in their 2022 Business Incentives Toolkit, which can be found online. At the Metro Atlanta Chamber, we have investors who own and operate data centers, who build data centers, who would not have the same level of business were it not for this industry. And we have several companies who supply contractors to data centers and who supply the electricity to those facilities. So thanks to the work of this committee, Georgia has a balanced and competitive approach to attracting investment that helps power our modern economy. And House Bill 1187 will help us keep that competitive edge. We are in an increasingly digital economy, which is driven by digital storage or data storage rather in cloud computing. And so we want to help our state continue to compete for these facilities as other states are aggressively competing as well. Companies look to make long-term technology infrastructure investments, so they look for long-term certainty, which is why we favor pushing this incentive well into the 2030s. And thanks to this incentive, Georgia's data center infrastructure is one of the top in the nation, and we hope that we can protect that reputation. And then I also want to just briefly answer a question that Representative Williamson had earlier. There are data centers in Morgan and Jasper counties, both with populations below 20,000. There could be others, and I'm just not aware of them, but there's two.
Ms. Palmer.
Thank you. And I appreciate the committee's time and spending so much energy on this issue. I just wanted to obviously reiterate what we've heard already and make sure that the committee understands that what's most important for the Georgia Chamber is a consistent tax environment. That is the thing that we hear from our members regularly. And so the extension of these tax credit exemptions is incredibly important to continuing to recruit and maintain a tax environment that is steady. That is what's most crucial to business in Georgia. And we hear that consistently from our members that use this tax credit exemption, as well as their partner members that provide the various services that they need.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer. Questions? I want to ask you, if I can, to ask you this question because, and I want to take a little bit of latitude here and to tell everybody that I thank them for coming here. I think the questions that have been asked by Chairman House and Representative Williamson and others on the committee, what we're seeking here to do is to be, make an informed decision to do something good with the policy. Quite frankly, this went into place. We were, there's some language in it that says, hey, we're going to check on this after a number of years, and the community, the investors, this brought this back to us and brought this to our attention earlier than we might have been looking to perfect, the language around it, whether it be 20 jobs or what type of investment, when you open the conversation about extending the date. So, I think it's fair to look at it holistically, and that's what we want to do. So my question to you on this, and to the gentleman from Douglas, and this may be easy to come by, but I know we have a lot in the QBE formula, for instance. There's 5 mil shares that certain counties have to pay. As data centers become more prevalent in counties with a lower tax base, I'd like to know how these facilities being located in those lower tax base counties, how that impacts their ability on the 5 mil share function, i.e. does this going in there and being induced some, have a unintended consequence of negatively impacting that 5 mil share. I know both you at the chamber are very, maybe not you two individually, but folks at the chambers are very involved in working with our folks on QBE funding to just make sure we're doing it. So as we're doing this, because they're going to become more prevalent. So I'd like to ask that. And then I want to ask you all to work with us on this as we'll carry it forward today. It is not the intent of me, and it's not the intent of the subcommittee to stop the conversation, stop this measure, or stop the conversation. I want to be positive about it, but I'd like to integrate things like we've heard today. Hey, you codify, there's a pilot to this. If this is going on, there's a pilot that goes with it. So that would be, what I would ask your help on. I would ask Ms. Stewart from Switch, you seem very knowledgeable and have a good story to tell about what's going on out there, how we can implement that best practice and maybe codify some of that as we're going forward. I know there are others here. So I would like to ask you both for our help. We have a committee day tomorrow. I'll be here all day. And with Chairman Blackman's permission, I'll spend the day working with you on perfecting this and getting in a position where we'll be ready to take action on it. This subcommittee have any further questions from our folks at the chamber? Not, I see none. Yes,
Mr. Chairman, if I may, we will gladly, I think we can safely say we'll commit to working with you. We do want to see this incentive move forward, whatever that looks like. So we would be happy to work with you.
Well, I hope it looks like something that's good for all the Georgians and will make more people come here and hire people and continue to make Georgia a great place to do business. And let me say this, and provide predictability. I'm going to acknowledge and with perhaps, I'll do this so Chairman Blackman doesn't have to, raising the ire of our colleagues in the Senate. I mean, I think it was a bit quick triggered to sunset a cousin version of this. And perhaps that made some of our investors and job creators in Georgia nervous about this. I think I can speak for Chairman Blackman. He'll shake his head if I can't, but this Ways and Means Committee is committed to predictability. We may not agree on every piece and every line that goes into a piece of legislation, but when you come to Georgia and you invest and you play by the rules that are in statute, it is a little less than fair to change that with a short runway. And so I think you can count on the Ways and Means Committee to do that. I think we can count on Senate Finance to do that as well. I think there was perhaps just, later in session things happen, and I don't opine on that anymore because it's just my single opinion. But I can promise you that we wish to provide a level of predictability because we realize that investment takes some time to decide on, and when it's made, it deserves to be respected.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
With that, is there anyone further that's not signed up that feels the need to share some information with us? If not, my intention is to continue to work on this, and I would invite any members of the subcommittee that want to do that alongside. As long as at least Chairman Blackman gives us the latitude, we're going to work on this to bring it forward, work with the author of the bill. I think Chairman Williams for doing that, and the stakeholders, both from the chamber and the boards of education, ACCG, all those that are affected by it, to do that and to get something that we can work with early next week. There are no further business before the subcommittee. Will stand adjourned without objection. Without objection, we're adjourned.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to call the Public Finance and Policy Subcommittee, the Ways and Means, to order today. We've just heard about fast money. Now we're going to get the an idea of the number one industry in this state as we get Representative Chairman Watson to come up to the front and tell us about how we stick a dollar in the ground and 20 years later maybe get a product from it. So it's a big industry, and Chairman Watson, you got the floor.
All right, Mr. Chairman, which one? I think there's two listed. 997. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am working off LC 43 2167. This is House Bill 997. This is involving the forestry industry, which, as many of you know, Georgia is the #1 forestry state in the nation. And so that's part of why we're bringing this forward, is to also create a little parity. I consider forestry an agricultural crop. And as many of you know, farmers don't decide what they're going to get paid for their products. They're told what they're going to get paid for their products. And forestry is very, very, very similar in that nature. And it truly is a crop and an agricultural crop at that. So basically what we're doing in this bill is we're providing an equipment ad valorem exemption. Currently, logging equipment that's used in the forest, in the woods, is taxed. And so, as many of you know, farm equipment is not taxed. Tractors stay in the field. There again, we come back to providing some equity there. They're not on the roadways. They're not causing problems. They're just in the woods doing their job and promoting the forestry industry. And so that's really all we're doing in there. I don't know why they were excluded many years ago when some of this language was put together. But there again, really, that's what all we're doing is just trying to provide some equity and to support our state's #1 for the forestry industry and allow it to continue to grow and to provide a break. This equipment depreciates fast. Obviously, it's worked really hard and does a lot of work. So there is a small impact on some of our local communities. But there again, we really don't know how much of it is accounted for and reported. And so we've had some of those conversations with ACCG and how this might impact them as well. But we feel like it will be very small, and there will be a great return on this investment. And that's the bill.
Mr. Chairman, isn't it true we had a long conversation during our Rural Development Council on this stuff?
It is. It is.
Thank you. I think we'll go to our presenters if we've got a list.
And Mr. Chairman, too, just to add, this will be a ballot question. So ultimately, we're just allowing the people of Georgia to decide on this and allow this to happen.
Okay. Andreas, why don't you take this mic here?
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I think we all know each other, but my name is Andres Villegas, and I head up the Georgia Forestry Association. Proud to do that in the #1 forestry state in the nation. We're a powerhouse, not only in the nation, but also for the globe. Children in China and Japan and Russia and Brazil are wearing diapers with pulp and paper made from the trees that we grow here in this state, and the pulp that we manufacture in our big mills around the state too as well, to the tune of about $39.1 billion. When I started this, when we came out of the recession, our forest economy was worth about $18 billion. So we've grown a lot in about 12 years or so. And part of that is critical nature of what we do in getting trees and monetizing those trees and getting them from the timberland that they grow on all the way to the mills where they get converted. So a big part of that is the ad valorem, the tax on ad valorem equipment to not only move them, but also grow them. What we're looking for and what we're hoping for and asking for your support here is for parity, basically to treat that equipment and treat the owners of that equipment the same as folks across the rest of the natural resource or agricultural community is treated too as well. So very important for us. And why is that important? Well, the last 2 years, as we all know, has changed a lot of things for us. The average cost of a truck driver has gone from, the average salary from the mid 40s to right around $70,000. So considerable inflation there for that, about $25,000. And the cost to insure a log truck has gone from about $2,500 to $3,000 up to $25,000 to $30,000 per piece of equipment. So we're looking at between $50,000 and $60,000 worth of inflationary cost on just one piece of the equipment set that it takes to monetize timber in the state and to help put money in the pockets of timber landowners and generate all of that economic and tax activity that happens across that $39 billion. If we're not moving timber, everything shuts down. And so that's an important part of it, of that equation for us, especially on the harvest and haul side, where we move about 2 million truckloads of timber in the state every year. But you got to grow it first. You got to harvest it. You've got to make sure that we're doing that sustainably. And this request is part of making sure that we can do that competitively. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Questions of committee? You must have did a great job, Andres.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Clear Mueller, ACCG.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Clint Mueller with the County Commissioners Association. We normally don't like any kind of exemptions, obviously, that have a revenue impact on county government, and they also would have impact on schools. We're trying to get numbers just so you all know on what the fiscal impact would be for this equipment. It's very difficult because it's personal property. It's built in with a lot of other types of equipment. So we have to go down to our assessor's office to try to get them to manually separate this stuff out. So we'll provide you with any of that information that we get. We're working on that. Right now, it doesn't look like it's going this is going to be a very large fiscal impact. In fact, in a lot of counties, it seems like some of this equipment may be going under the radar now. So, but it would have some fiscal impact on us. But I think the next bill we're going to talk about would have much more of a significant impact.
Okay. Questions of ACCG? It's not hang close. Thanks. And I don't starts with a V. Oh, okay. We signed twice. Okay. Andres, thank you. I got the Andres. Is there any other questions from the author or anything the author wants to close with on the bill? If there's no other people to speak on the bill?
I'm good, Mr. Chairman. Just appreciate the opportunity to be here.
In that case, we shall move on to 686. LC 43-2089.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. Again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. This piece of legislation, once again, is somewhat the same kind of conversation, just trying to provide some parity with our forestry industry and our other agricultural crops that we grow and produce. And basically what we're doing is you've got a resolution before you where we're providing a reduction in the rate of the ad valorem for tax assessment of timber at the sale of harvest. So many of you know, when you harvest the trees, you're taxed currently at 100% of that value when it's harvested. When I harvest a crop, I'm not taxed on that crop. And so that's basically what we're doing here, is we're cutting back that 100% assessment to 40% to the landowner, and then would allow for the state to reimburse the local communities at a rate of 60%. This is very similar to our Forest Land Protection Act, where we do the same thing for land. And you'll see on lines 22 to 24, that's where we're talking about basically providing parity with other property as well. We're stating that most all other property are assessed at the 40% value. So there's your parity there to do the same to timber when it's harvested after you've invested lots of time and energy and years into that. And as you go on down, you'll see where it similar language to what FLIPA does to provide for that reimbursement to keep the counties whole. But again, this is just another piece of legislation. It's we're thinking that it's at the 100% level, it's about $20 million dollars that flows through this. At 40% assessed value, it would be around 10 to 12 million. And those are just rough numbers going forward. But again, it's just trying to provide parity for this industry and can allow us to continue to be the #1 forestry state in the nation. I think it's a good bill. And, once again, tree farmers, landowners don't get to decide how much they're going to get paid for their crop. They're told. And this helps with some of that. So that's the bill, Mr. Chairman. And I don't know if anybody else wants to speak to it, but I'll be glad to take any questions.
Members of committee, questions? I hope somebody's going to talk about this. This has got to be a mistake. Georgia charges property taxes at $6.57, while Arkansas and Alabama about $2. Severance tax for Georgia is $3.50 for, is that correct?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I forgot about that, but you'll see before you that Georgia, the tax rate is at 12%, and we're still the #1 state in the nation as far as forestry goes. So I can't imagine what this will do for our state and make us more competitive with our neighboring states going forward.
Andres, you want to talk about this?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you once again, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee for the opportunity to address this issue. Happy to get into these numbers. What you'll see there in the first line is where we're currently at. That Georgia 100% reflects the fact that we are taxing timber at 100% of its value. Every other real property that all of us in this room own is taxed at 40% value. We are the outlier. And so #1 in that category. #2, the last column there, effective tax rate. If you own timberland in Georgia, you're going to be somewhere around this 12% effective tax rate. Over twice what the next highest state in the southeastern U.S. pays. So we are just way out of whack. And why does that really effectively matter? Well, #1, I mentioned we've got a $39 billion industry we're trying to keep rolling. It doesn't do that without trees. That depends on landowners making the decision that they're going to grow, that they were going to replant, or they're going to plant trees in the first place. But every year in the state, we're losing 118,000 acres of timberland. That's being converted to urban uses. That's a lot of land every single year. Now we gain from agricultural land that's converted. So there's a net there that's roughly the same or close to being the same. But all the same, on the land that's left, there has to be a reason for that landowner to plant trees. And when they're paying the highest effective tax rates in the southeastern U.S., that's a disincentive. And it also means they have less money to pay for a tree or for site prep or whatever it may be, or higher genetics. So we are compressing more of that timber, that crop, onto fewer acres every year. We have to make sure that they're more productive and they're more profitable, for that matter, to be able to do that sustainably over the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years and meet the life of those mills that are being reinvested in every year. So, Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely correct. If you look at where we're at in severance tax, we pay $3 a year per acre. We're asking to get that down to $1.20. The next highest state is Arkansas at 88 cents. If you're in Florida, you pay nothing. So that's a pretty steep drop there. Also, if you look at our timber tax, we're at total timber tax per acre per year at $9.57. We're asking to get that to $7.77. The next highest is $3.97 in Florida. And so overall, what we're trying to do is we're probably never going to get to that 5% level that so many of our neighboring states are able to provide for their landowners. But we do benefit from several other factors that help our industry stay strong. But this is one area that affects 450,000 landowners in the state that are harvesting timber to keep their forest healthy, to keep them from getting disease, to catching on fire like we see out west in places like Colorado and Washington State and California, obviously. It all comes down to management, and management comes down to money. And if you're paying high taxes, it makes it harder to do that. So that's the big driver for us, and that's why we wanted to show you these numbers, because it's a very compelling story and just the figures we shared with you here.
Tell me again the number that stuck out to me a while ago. You were telling about the increase in the fees to a truck fee insurance.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
What was that number again that's going up?
On the insurance side, it's gone from say roughly $3,000 per truck to about $25,000 a truck. There's a little bit of wiggle room up and down there, but it's increased tremendously, and that's just been over the last really 3 or 4 years. A lot of it accelerating over the past 2 years, excuse me. And then of course, labor side, on the labor side too, as well, as we're all competing for truck drivers across all industries. That's been an issue for us. And I remind a lot of the folks that we talk to that these issues that the rest of the economy is feeling now, forestry began to feel them about 5 years ago or so. So we tend to be at the tip of the spear on labor, insurance, a lot of other issues, logistics issues that affect the rest of the economy. They hit us first, and then they bleed into the economy eventually at some point. COVID just accelerated that process.
Tell me how, I understand lumber has gone up quite a bit. Does that make up for the cost and the increased expenditures that you've got to come out?
Sure. Yeah. Our economy has grown, but it hasn't. One of the after effects of the Great Recession was that when a lot of our economy was in lockstep. So if let's say the price of lumber went up, the price of timber usually followed after 6 months, a 6-month lag. That became decoupled. And so a lot of the different demand and pricing drivers that are existing in our industry today are not tied to one another. So timber prices have been increasing over the past, I'd say 6 months, but for the first year and a half of that higher demand, it was relatively flat. And that's driven by an oversupply. So essentially, we have seen a lot of growth. But it's not concentrated necessarily on the landowner side of things, which is where these severance tax costs are squarely focused on. It's only the landowner that pays the severance tax. So the mills or no one else absorbs that cost. I'd say the other challenge here is because the harvesting costs have gone up. That means mills can't go out as far to get timber. Timber is a very heavy commodity. So most mills want to stay within 40 to 45 miles of the mill to source all the materials. They can go further when they need to. It's wet periods. We've had a very, very wet past 12, 18 months in Georgia. But when the costs are so high, operational costs are so high, that brings those mills to even closer into their local geography. So they may be sourcing at 30 to 40 miles instead of 40 to 60 miles. And that means that all those landowners they become kind of landlocked. They're outside of the geography to be able to sell their timber oftentimes. And so those challenges as well end up going back into the pocket of the landowner, right? They're delayed on their ability to generate revenue and things of that nature.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess could ask this for several. I had a couple of questions. Now, it's been my experience that the committee has been pretty friendly and I think our General Assembly in our state to the forestry industry. How did we get so far out of line here? What's the history there? Is there?
Sure. So it's a combination of things. I mean, if you want to go back to the beginning of how a lot of this started, Mr. Chairman, is back to the 1920s and 30s when our state built a tax system that tax where the wealth was at. And at that point in time, the wealth was in the land. If you were wealthy, and our economy was driven by that. There's a few other large things, railroads and a few other things at that point in time. But we had nothing of the economy that we have today. Atlanta's economy, the service economy, all these exports, all these other things that are so integral, like we just heard, data centers and all these other things did not exist. And so in many ways, we were correct to build a tax system that taxed the land to pay for local schools, to pay for local services and local government off of the land, because that's where you would go to get that. As our economy evolved, our tax system, as you probably already know, hasn't quite evolved. And this committee in particular, and under the chairman and the previous chairman that have managed this committee as well, including Mr. Richard Royal, who's here, know very, very well that, always trying to catch up to what the modern economy looks like. But it's very different in Atlanta and urban areas than it is in our rural areas. In our rural areas, we are still taxing the landowner to be able to pay for a lot of these rural services. And so it's become a little bit of a tug of war, if you will, to try and figure out how to cover these expenses, if you will. at that local level, and it's still going towards the landowner for a lot of those fees. That is why in this particular bill, the way it's written, there is a way to cover the hole, if you will, or the gap that's created by the tax benefit here of making this change and bringing it down to 40%, where we're asking for the state to reimburse the counties for basically 98.5% of their losses in the exact same manner that we do through the Forest Land Protection Act. So really since the 1980s, 90s, we've passed CUVA, we've passed FLIPA, we've passed most recently the Qualified Timberland Property Program. And all of those are designed to help trying to get us more competitive, if you will, on our ad valorem taxes with other states in particular, and to keep investment dollars flowing into our sector. And that was important. When I believe it was when the Forest Land Protection Act was created, part of the negotiation for that bill created this reality here, where 100% of the value of the timber was included in this calculation instead of 40% of the value of the timber. Since then, a lot of things have changed. Of course, every year millage is going up. Every year, the FLIPA tables that are reported by DOR to come up with these with the ad valorem rates on timberland go up almost to the mandated limit, or not mandated, but the limit that's set within legislation. And so those numbers are always increasing, and there's been a certain amount of creep that's happened there too as well. So we think at this point that it's fair and equitable to come down to the 40%, because so many other things have changed for us too as well. We also feel like this really doesn't affect the counties in a tremendous or large way. The impact across the state would be about $12 million spread across all 159 counties that have a severance tax or collect a considerable amount of severance tax. And like I said, of that $12 million, that's going to come from a different pot of money that would be reimbursed through the state. So the counties, as the legislation is currently written, would essentially remain whole to the tune of 98.5% of what they're currently collecting.
So I'm going to skip back because Clint's like over your right shoulder as I'm looking at this.
Faces back there.
Clint. So on a lot of our rural counties, I mean, do you think that this has fallen the way it has because that is one of the primary or only industries in those particular counties? Is that what we're seeing in certain parts of the state? Or you testified earlier, and I'm kind of combining both these bills when I ask that question, I guess. So I'll address it when I get back up there. If you want to wait till I get up there. Sure.
Mr. Chairman, we've got a hard 3 o'clock. There's another committee behind us. So if I might suggest that we bring this forward to our next committee meeting, and Representative Washburn, can you hold that one? Or okay, we're going to bring it back and give Mr. Mueller time to think about his answer. That was a good question. So we will adjourn this Public Finance and Policy Subcommittee, and we will come back in at our next meeting. So hold those thoughts. Thank you. We're adjourned.